Shipmates. It is still the 2nd of September, and with everything that's been going on, as you know, I poked a hole in the boat over at Sabine Pass, and then I met John and Whitney and their daughter. John's a shipwright. We came over here to Stingaree Marina on the Bolivar Peninsula, and John's fixed my boat. There's not a leak anywhere, and I mean, it's just one blessing after another. But there was an event that took place on the 28th, on Friday the 28th of August, that I've not had the time to tell you about. And I feel guilty because it's a part of this voyage. It's a part of what happened to me aboard the Happy Hippie out there in that ocean. And you're traveling with me, and I just feel obligated to tell you this. Actually, I'm not going to tell it to you. I'm going to read it to you from my journal. So this video is going to be a little longer than most of the ones I've made thus far, okay? So if you've got a few minutes, we're going to pick up this story on the day that I left Port Fourchon. That was on the 23rd of August, okay? And I'm going to begin reading to you from there. And this goes up through Friday, an event that took place Friday morning, okay? So to begin with, we'll start right now. Only made approximately 15 miles the first day. Found a protected bay on the chart and headed for Wine Island Pass. When I got there, there was no barrier island, destroyed by the hurricane, I suppose. Anyway, spent the night in 20 foot of water. Next morning, went back into the Gulf under motor power, no wind. Went 8 miles and dropped anchor on a shoal, 18 foot of water. Spent the night, but I noticed that night was the only time the wind was blowing. So I decided I'd sleep during the day and sail at night starting the following day. This worked pretty well, but made for some long days. When in the water that was too deep to anchor, I would hove to and sleep, and being that it was during the daylight, I felt pretty safe. For the next 2 days, around 2:30 p.m., I would begin sailing and continue through the night until around 4 a.m., when the winds died down. This activity went on through Thursday. However, Friday morning, the wind continued past 4 a.m., and so did I. I had to change my destination point because of the weather report. 5-foot seas predicted outside of Galveston, winds up to 30 knots from the west in 2 days. That was how long I thought it would take me to make it to Galveston, and I didn't want any part of 5-foot seas. I'd had that and more, if you'll recall, in that very first storm. So I set my course for Port Arthur, Texas. And I thought I could make that in the 1 day that was remaining, and I wanted to keep sailing, keep going. On the morning of the 28th of August, '09, the winds were southeast at around 10 to 12 knots, and I was still sailing. Around 10:30 a.m., I passed an oil platform. That's very important to remember that part. And in the front of me was totally black horizon. A big storm was coming straight at me. At least this time, as opposed to the first major storm I'd encountered, I had total confidence in the Hippie's ability to stay afloat, no matter how rough it was going to get. But I still didn't, and don't yet, have enough confidence in my sailing skills to try to sail in these conditions. Thus, I furled the jib and dropped the mainsail, and tied it down. And while zipping up my raincoat, it hit. The entire sea around me became a washing machine. Waved from every direction, and the wind seemed to do the same. The little 10 horsepower motor, outboard motor, was at full throttle and could barely keep the boat pointed at 1.2 knots. It was an ocean hell out there. But we kept plugging along, rain so heavy I couldn't make out the pointer on the plotter while sitting in the back of the cockpit operating the throttle. I looked back, and there was, of all things, a ship on my stern. She was a full-sized freighter with her port beam facing my stern. She was approximately 800 to 1,000 yards away. This is just an estimate because I'm not sure that I could really see that far. I was a little nervous and was hoping that the ship would pass as soon as possible. But each time I could look back, and there it was, only it appeared to be closing the distance between us. At some point, I noticed that it showed absolutely no lights whatsoever. Hell, even I had turned on my nav lights due to the darkness brought on by the storm. I tried desperately to get away from that ship, but no matter which way I turned or ran, when I looked back, there it would be, still closing. I no longer felt any fear from the wind, waves, or the storm at all, but was beginning to believe that this oncoming vessel without a doubt, was going to kill me by overtaking and destroying the little hippie girl. Approximately 45 minutes into to perhaps an hour passed. The ship was within 250 yards. I could see her as clearly as the downpouring rain would allow, and it appeared as though she was undaunted by the storm, while the hippie and I were being tossed about with inexplainable velocity. This damn ship seemed to be unfazed, no pitching, no rolling, no response to the seas whatsoever, and she looked to be absent of any living being, as though she was adrift. And as I looked to see her name, for now she was close enough to have been able to identify her, there was no markings of any sort upon her bow or anywhere else on her port beam or her bridge. Nothing. Suddenly, off my starboard bow, I saw a little light in the distance. This was the trailing edge of the storm. I pointed the hippie girl's bow in that direction, and the ship was still closing. I thought surely I could make it into the daylight. The ship operator, there had to be one, would see us, and the danger would be over. We continued as hard as our little outboard would push us, and finally began to make our way out of the storm. The rain was lightening, the seas eased a bit, and the darkness began to lighten, and the ship had moved to around 1,000 yards away, as if the chase was over. We steadily pursued the light, and within an hour found ourselves under blue skies again. I turned back, and in about 4 or 5 miles to the rear, I could see the oil platform that I was near when the storm began. But what I couldn't see was a ship. No ship. Nowhere. On my 360-degree horizon, there was no ship or vessel of any kind. Now, I told my friend Kurt this story before I've shared it with you, and his response was, ghost ship. He said, Jim, for hundreds of years sailors have seen them out there. He said he believes them, and he believes that I saw one. Another friend of mine that I observed recently, her name is Whitney, she pointed out that this may have been a ship that was pushing me towards that daylight, making sure I didn't get lost in that storm. I don't know. I really don't know. But I do know this. I know what happened. I know what I saw. And I know what I didn't see. I saw a ship, and I didn't see a ship. I wanted to share that with you. So, in closing, I want to say peace and love from the Happy Hippie. This is your Captain Jim. Y'all take care of each other. Until next time. Bye for now.